This is the African Scientist, science from an African perspective. If you're listening to us on our podcast, this is the only place where African voices speak science. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, you're missing out on all the nice things there. Please head on there and subscribe. Yeah, today we have a guest and I will let her introduce herself.
Yay! Hi, my name is Ruth Wambui, commonly known as Wambui, and I am an African scientist. So my main focus of research was plant genomics. Yeah, that's it. I'm also the host of Farm to Table podcast. So if you listen to podcasts, you can find us on all podcast platforms. So Farm to Table podcast KE. We talk about all things food, the food value chain, food security. Yeah. And thank you for having me, Brian. I'm so happy to be here.
Wow, thank you for coming, Ruth. I should tell everyone that Ruth used to be my classmate during our masters, but she chose to do the better, more scientific plant genomics, while I chose to study the boring stuff. Also, by the way, her podcast. It's one of the best podcasts ever. You really need to go and listen to it. It's really great. I will leave a link in the description.
Oh, thanks for saying that, honestly. I try.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk today about a gap that we have seen in science, right? And we were discussing a certain paper that was published in Nature. It's about sequencing the genomes of the plant and animal species in Africa. So first, by the way, I just wanted to say, did you see the name of the first author? Thank God, Echizona Ebenezer. What an interesting name!
Yeah. African names.
It's kind of, it's kind of just stood out to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that name actually also stood out to me, and also, I don't know, I felt some kind of pride seeing African stuff being published on such a paper like Nature, because I feel like that probably hasn't happened. I mean, it's a rare occurrence, and it wasn't even about research that has already been done, like publishing the data or anything. It was more of like an opinion, and we never see that kind of stuff being worthy of Nature even. Like, I don't know. So I felt a kind of pride.
This highlights the importance of this research, the importance of the topic that they are talking about here today, right?
Yeah.
So they start by pointing out some animal species, a sleeper fish in West Africa called the Ostrichus africanus, that is a staple in many West African countries. And they also talk about some plants like the fluted pumpkin and the marama bean. And they point out something really important, that although these organisms are important, very important to the people of Africa, their genomes haven't been sequenced yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much in line with everything about Africa, and that's why I like your podcast so much on your YouTube, because you highlight we Africans, we're so multifaceted. There are so many other parts of us other than us dying of hunger in the streets and riding lions to work and to like
lions
we
to
are and giraffes. We are scientists. Like, we are normal people. We have scientists. We actually have people who care about science and about research and everything, but I think the world has such a I don't know what to say, like such a tunnel vision look into Africa. You only know Africa for one thing, you know, which is poverty and suffering, but we live full lives. We are multifaceted individuals and a continent, you know. So that's very much in line with that. The fact that the crops that are very important to us and the species that are important to us haven't been sequenced, you know.
So they talk about establishing something called the African Bio-genome project that is meant to sequence over 105,000 endemic species of plants and animals in Africa. Yeah, it seems like this is going to be something quite big.
It's a huge project, and for me, I looked at it, I saw the money that they were saying. So they were saying that they want organizations within Africa to be able to contribute, is it $100 million per year for the period of 10 years. It's a lot of money that's going into it, so it's a huge project.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm sure someone is already asking, like, why the hell do we need to sequence the genomes of these plants and animals? How does it help us?
Like,
you know,
who cares?
Yeah, like, who cares about the genomes of this plant? So you, as a plant genomics, can you like tell us like why it's important for us to sequence these genomes and have a store of them? Yeah.
Well, the best way that I can put it is that by sequencing any organism's genome, you basically, it's like a blueprint to what is that organism and what is that species like. So, for example, if we have, for example, the species that are being sequenced for the African Bio-genome project are very, like, they're very commonly consumed or used. They have common uses. So by being able to see the genomic sequence of those organisms, there's nothing that you can't do, you know, because you can be able to understand that organism on such a fundamental level. That's basically that's what genome sequencing is. You're trying to understand this organism on the most fundamental level, because DNA, right? So for example, even when we were dealing with the pandemic earlier on, very early on, in fact, we would hear that they've sequenced the genome of a particular strain, like Omicron, the strain that is causing the Omicron variant. And for that, we're able to get, you know, how does this virus operate? How can we then create like a vaccine that is protecting us against that? So by understanding the genomic sequences of these organisms, really there's nothing we cannot do. You know, when we have that information, we have everything that we need to be able to understand it and make it to the best use, the best human use.
That's true. You know, they talk about stuff like sustainable food systems, stuff like conservation across the continent, and even helping us to reach global biodiversity targets that were set, that help us to know exactly what we have and exactly which species and which variants we have that can really be helpful for Africa, right?
Yeah. The thing is, we've I can honestly understand probably why in the agriculture perspective it hadn't been done, because with crops like food crops, let's say majority of them are like the staple are maize, wheat, rice, those kinds of crops. Their genomes have already been sequenced, right? As in, so much has already been done with that. But then now, where this Africa Bio-genome project comes in is when we're talking about the plants that are endemic to Africa, right? So they're not consumed worldwide. And you know, I honestly think that before colonization or before whatever, we didn't used to, those were not our staple crops. I honestly don't think rice, maize, and all those things were ours. I may be ignorant, to be honest, I don't know, but I feel like we had our own food crops that were our staples, that are not, you know, the ones that are now staple to the whole world currently. So I think that's where some of the information got lost, because now we took on the staples of the world, and our staples were no longer, you know, we kind of lost our original crops and plants.
That's true. And they also talk about the fact that most of the genome sequencing that has been done on anything African has been done outside Africa with the other people's agenda. You know, I was surprised that they said this, that less than 2% of the genomic analysis of the human genome project came from any African individual, you know. And you remember the Human Genome Project was actually one of the biggest projects of the early 2000s when this whole DNA thing was catching up, but only 2% is African. Which just blows my mind.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the continent has really been neglected in the past when it comes to so much, and especially science. I feel like it's just now we're starting to realize that, oh, we actually have African scientists. And then something else that I noticed is so for example, if you're doing your, like, for example, for me, if I had done my master's in Kenya, the quality of work that I would have done would have been so different to that I did in China, because of even something as basic as the machines that I used to sequence DNA, the quality of the data that I would have had, even PCR machines. I mean, we have like the old model machines, you know, like now if you look at somewhere like China, they have such modern, you know, gadgets for science, because I think science is something that's very important to them. But for us, we get the old, like, oh, this PCR machine that we are no longer using, let's donate it to a university in Africa. so even I think even the quality of work and the quality of research that is done in Kenya and Africa as a continent might be a bit low compared to the rest of the world. And maybe the people watching or listening don't know that Ruth studied at the University of Chinese Academy of Science, one of the best institutions in the world. Ruth, you should have started with that. I feel like I didn't do a good intro myself, but okay.
They say that there's something interesting that was noted in this paper, that during the Ebola epidemic in West Africa in 2014 to 2016, around 269,000 blood samples were obtained from patients for diagnosis. But get this, the samples were shipped abroad to Europe and North America, and none of the results were returned back to the people whose blood samples were taken first. And then all the work that was published from this research that was done out of these blood samples, the only names that appeared on them were the names of those guys out there in Europe and America who so no Africans. The problem is this, that most of these international institutions, they come to Africa, they collect the genomic samples, they take them to their country, and then they publish these huge papers and these huge findings, and no Africans are credited at all for that work. What do you think about this?
To be honest, I am not surprised. I am not surprised at all. I mean, if we're talking about the exploitation of Africa, I mean, that's a story that's as old as time. I mean, our own heritage and our own, you know, the things that we hold on to that remind us about our ancestors and everything, you can only be able to view them in the British museums and Belgium and everything. So that's not new.
Man,
That is not new.
so sad. Yeah,
It's really sad. But I think we as Africans, and especially now, we really need to wake up and recognize the roles that we play in these kinds of dynamics. Because even speaking for myself, and even from my friends, all my friends who maybe wanted to go and do their masters, and especially in science, with social courses like business and everything, you can study here because you don't really have any scientific research. But as a scientist, I myself preferred to do my masters and probably even my PhD, if I do end up doing it, abroad, because that's where the resources are for us to be able to do the kind of quality research that you would like to be able to do and to put out there. So I think the role that we have played in this is that we really haven't invested and even taken science as a priority, which I mean, I get it, because we do have so many other problems, but we also need to allow science to catch up with how we're doing things. So for example, as a government, why not invest in quality machines necessary for the correct science to be done? Those kinds of things would allow us to not take our resources out there to have them sequenced, because I imagine that if there were the correct equipment to sequence the Ebola DNA, they wouldn't have been taken to Europe and the US and whatever. They would have just done them here. So let's say, yes, they should give us credit, but also we need to do more so that we can actually compete with the rest of the world.
Speaking of investing, this African Bio-genomic project that they're talking about is said to cost, get this, $100 million per year.
Yes.
Right?
For 10 years.
And I'm sure someone is like, wait. How is this money going to pay? How is this money going to come back? Which benefit exactly are we going to get from this? And they have made a really good comparison, a really good parallel from this. They have said that the Human Genomic Project that was done in 2003 cost around $3 billion from the beginning to the end. But by 2019, that project had contributed more than $265 billion to the economy of the United States. Right? Through all these other things that came as a result of this Human Genomic Project, the big science, the big machinery, the big jobs, all that. So exactly. So what do you think about this huge amount of money that is needed?
I mean, it's a lot of money. I mean, 100 million USD per year, that is a lot of money. And I'm actually just wondering whether we're going to be able to raise that money, first of all, because they want it to be raised within the continent, our continent. Okay, so let's just pause there. I don't know if we're going to be able to raise that money. I hope so. But I think, I can see how the money will be, brought back into the African continent as what is it called? Like profit? Is it profit? Something like that. Because let me speak from the side that I know. I speak about food systems and agriculture and all of that. So whatever is going to be contributed to this project, by this project into agriculture. So for example, the food industry is projected to be, about $1 trillion USD. I think it's $1 trillion USD by the next couple of years, because the human population is increasing globally, so there's higher demand for food and all of that. And so if in Africa we're able to actually do sustainable agriculture with the help of this Africa Bio-genome data that we're going to get, then we stand to benefit from that 1 trillion food you know, that money that is in the food industry, if we can be able to somehow contribute to that, you see that money will come back to the continent. So I can see I can see how that money will be raised as a result of the project. I think, yeah. And also with conservation, I think one of the goals of the project is to ensure better conservation of like the biodiversity. And with biodiversity, it plays such a huge role in the current climate change crisis that we're seeing. So again, I can really see the benefits of that and how that money is going to be mined back into the continent. Hopefully if things go well. What do you think?
You've actually reminded me of some research I was reading last week about the fact that we are going through the 6th largest extinction event, where the human caused climate change is causing a lot of animals and plants to just die off. The conditions are becoming less and less hospitable to them, and therefore many species are getting lost. And now imagine the beautiful species of fish maybe in the African lakes that we have never sequenced that are now disappearing. Yeah. And the beautiful trees in our rainforests that we have never sequenced that are now disappearing. Yeah. And who knows what kind of benefit these organisms would hold and what kind of lives they would have changed if we actually knew about them, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's so man, I think that this project is a really good one. They say that it's going to employ nearly almost 300 scientists from all over Africa, almost 300, 55 from like biodiversity, agriculture, bioinformatics, and then some more in the academics, policy makers, and other institutions. So this is going to be a huge thing, and it's going to be a good place for people like you to get jobs.
Yeah, people like us, Brian.
Yeah.
Like us.
Yeah. I am forgetting that I'm a scientist, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity. And to be honest, if I were to be a part of such a huge project, it would be such an honor. Like, can you imagine being a part of such a huge project? And it's so monumental for Africa, because who knows, maybe after this is a success, it will promote for more and more such projects to be done within the continent. I mean, it's great. It's a great opportunity.
This thing really has the capacity to change Africa. They're talking of establishing a gene bank in Tunisia, and then another research center in Burkina Faso. So the scientists are saying that, taking into account the prices of the other genomic projects around the world, it will cost around $4,200 per species to sequence one species. And carrying out this entire project is projected to take around 10 years.
I can see how that's going to, but there's going to be so much work for the bioinformaticians. Like, it's a lot of work for the bioinformaticians.
Yeah, I can already see the what are they called? Those DNA trees where they like genomics. What are they called?
Funny.
Forgetting the name of that.
Funny story. I did a lot of phylogenetic trees.
Phylogenetic trees. Yes.
Funny
That's
story.
what I was looking for.
I did a lot of bioinformatics for my masters, and oh my God. Do you know when I started my research, because I left, as you pointed out, we were classmates, and I left our school and I went to a different school. And so I remember for the first month when I went there and I got like my research topic and everything, and then I started, and I was so fresh, like I was so new to the bioinformatics field that I had to learn everything from scratch. I didn't know a single terminology, a single software, nothing. So I remember when I started to learn it, and I was doing it by myself because language barrier. I mean, my group members really tried. Like, props to them. They really tried, but the language barrier was just too huge. And I remember when I checked my weight 1 month into starting my research, I had lost 10 kgs.
Oh my gosh.
It was hectic.
I guess many people don't know how difficult getting into science and succeeding in it is. You know how much time and effort and energy it takes.
Difficult.
Yeah.
I dropped 10 kgs so easily, and yeah.
Wow, this but I know for sure that the kind of work that is going to be done here is really going to add so much value to Africa.
It will.
It's going to help improve our food systems, you know, help us to have more resilient, better crops, understanding this whole plant breeding area. Oh, by the way, I did a whole video about GMO. It's linked to the pop-up banner right here. And it's going to improve conservation of those animals that are getting lost due to climate change. And imagine the amount of data that we are going to get. You know, I think some people don't get how important data is. Can you just tell us how important just having the genomic data is?
Data is everything, and I've honestly come to realize that I recently featured someone who is in the tech space but for agriculture, and what they do basically is to collect the data, like just farmers' data regarding to income and everything, so they collect a lot of data. And that guy was telling me his startup is based on agricultural data, and how important data is. I mean, I think we underestimate it, and you can never really tell how important data is, but data is everything. For example, if you go today to a bank to get a loan, they're going to ask you about your income. You know, that's data. How have you been earning? How have you been, you know, if you go to a hospital today, they're going to ask you about your medical history. That's your data. So data is ingrained in every single aspect of our lives, and it's so important. And if we have especially this particular data on DNA and genomics and all of that, it's such a game changer. It's such a game changer because you basically understand an organism fully at such a fundamental level. So you can be able to, if you see, let's say it's an animal, if it gets sick, you can be able to pinpoint from the data this particular gene predisposes it to become, you know, to behave like this because of this. It tells us everything, honestly. So we can't overstate the importance of data.
Yeah, I think this publication just puts into perspective the fact that Africa, we need to do things for ourselves, okay? We need to stop complaining and crying and saying, oh my God, these people stole from us, these people took this from us, and we need to just get up and do stuff for ourselves, you know, invest the money, buy the equipment, equip our universities, get the scientists. Scientists are already here. It's me and Ruth. Yes, the scientists. Okay, get us there, and let us record this. Let us take these samples and do the science that is needed to really better Africa. I think this is the biggest takeaway from this, right?
Really, truly, it's the biggest takeaway, which is that we actually can be able to do things for ourselves. Like, we really don't need to be relying on the Western world to come and do things for us. And I feel like, to be honest, we've been very complacent, and I know maybe, you know, we haven't had the best environment to actually stand up on our own 2 feet and do the things for ourselves, you know, because of all the exploitation and everything. But I believe that now is really the time. We should, you know, it's time for us to really take control of our lives and like have agency over our lives.
That is so true. That is so true. So, is there something else that maybe we haven't mentioned that you'd like to tell us, or maybe a final word, a parting shot, whatever. Tell us any good things, Ruth.
I don't know. I think one thing that we can discuss, Brian, is the importances, the three importances we've mentioned about conservation. Maybe we can speak more about, you know, the goals of this paper according to now the project, which is you know, food. We've already spoken about, I think, sustainable food systems in agriculture and conservation, and then the other one is data sharing. So what's the importance of data sharing? Like, what do we stand to gain if we have all that data to share?
I think, as you've mentioned, that data helps scientists to first plan. It helps them to establish certain base levels, you know, that we understand this organism is like this, and therefore it's reacting to the environment like this, and therefore we can help it like this. So getting the genomic data can really make the big difference between an organism completely becoming extinct and one completely becoming you know, recovering, this population recovering. And as you can see, I think we can take examples all over Africa where scientists are helping certain organisms that were near extinction, like the white rhino, I think.
The white rhino.
Understanding, the white rhino was nearly extinct. I think at some point there were like only 2 or 3 remaining in the whole world.
The last male white rhino recently died, called Sudan. But the good thing is that they had harvested its sperm and everything, and there are two females. There are 2 female ones left. So I think now they are in the process of doing artificial insemination so that the 2 females can now produce fresh new rhinos. Can you imagine? We were so close to losing our whole species. We have 2 left.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the only reason we know about it is because a rhino is a huge animal that we can easily see, you know?
Right.
But now imagine the tiny little fish in the ocean that is probably a keystone species in the ecosystem, but nobody has ever studied it. Nobody has ever sequenced their genome. Exactly. A certain bacteria that is supporting a whole ecosystem, and we don't know about it because nobody has taken the time to sequence its genome. Nobody has taken the time to study it, and that's the reason why this research is really timely.
Truly, it's really so timely, and I think probably the reason why the Human Genome Project was so impactful, it's because I think we human beings we are like the most selfish species on earth, to be honest. So we really took it upon ourselves to study the human genome because we can be able to, you know, take care of ourselves. But then, and as we are now learning with the whole climate change crisis, is that we depend on so many other organisms for our livelihoods. You know, like for us to be alive, we need to coexist with the rest of the organisms in the ecosystem. So yeah, I think this is really coming at a good time. To be honest, it's true what people say, like a crisis breeds so much positivity. Like there are only very few things that are born out of non-crisis situations, but crisis situations, they breed so much, because I feel like were it not for the climate change crisis that we're currently going through, I don't think anyone would care enough to check the African Bio-genome and see what is going on. But now, because we're in the crisis, we're now in crisis mode, something like this has been born. So True.
Yeah, so
okay, so parting shot, I would say this project has come at such a timely moment in our lives as young African scientists, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to see the work that they're going to do, and I hope we'll be back here discussing the wild success that this project has experienced. That's my parting shot. Also, check out my podcast, I speak about food and food systems and agriculture, sustainable agriculture. That's Farm to Table Podcast, KE, on all podcast platforms.
So thank you so much, Ruth, for being part of the African Scientist today. We are so glad to have you. This entire recording will be live both on our YouTube channel. Please go and subscribe, and on our podcast, the African Scientist Podcast, the only place where African voices speak science. I will have links to all the papers that we use in this discussion in the description. And I will also have links to Ruth's podcast. Please go and listen to her. She has incredible, amazing stuff to share, okay? Yeah, and if you're a scientist, an African scientist, and you would like to be hosted in my show, come tell us what kind of research you're doing and how you're planning to change the world and change Africa, please hit me up on my social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you so much. This is the African Scientist, science from an African perspective.